Good morning, Neil Sean here in the very heart of London, and as ever, thank you for joining me today. And once again today we're having a look back in history at the stories that were breaking big, even though we may not have even been here. I know it's hard to believe. How did the world survive without us? As ever, a big wave to one and all. I hope you're all keeping well. And if I said these words to you, by the way, maybe you'll know about the very first story that happened on this day, way back in 1981. If I said good night, John Boy, oh yes. This was the very final episode broadcast by CBS of The Brilliant Waltons. Been going for over a decade. Brilliant series, made a lot of stars of the people associated with it. But of course, a lot of them couldn't escape, the characters that they created. So they became so well identified as the major characters. Can you remember them all? Jim Bob, yeah, do you remember? The mother, the father, I know. I remember the actors' names, not necessarily the characters' names. I love the Waltons. Now, wherever you are in the world somewhere, apparently this is the most repeated TV series after Friends. So somebody somewhere in the world is still watching the Waltons, and rightly so. What else happened on this day? This day in 1899, a man really who changed the face of cinema. I mean, truly. If I mention the words movies like The Birds, Psycho, Rear Window, well, we can only really be talking about one man, can't we? Alfred Hitchcock. Now, I've interviewed many people who knew Alfred, and they said he was as, shall we say, offbeat as one might imagine. But what he did was he loved creating the sort of things that made people jump out of their seats. There's been a few of those people, hasn't there, when you think, a film director, William Castle, he was very good at that. But I think the most famous has to be Alfred Hitchcock. And as I say, he was born on this day in 1899 in Leytonstone, Essex in England. This is hard to believe because way back in 1975, the Rocky Horror Picture Show became the longest running release in film history, but it opened on this day in 1975. Now, what's interesting I find about this particular thing, when it opened, I've met a few of the stars from Rocky Horror, and it simply wasn't a success. It was one of those slow burners that took off. But we all know, oh, don't pretend you're not, I want to see you doing it. We all know the time warp, don't we, from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. A brilliant movie, a brilliant stage show. And when you think about it, Tim Curry and co. created an absolute masterpiece. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Also on this day, the beautiful soprano, pop star and former wife of Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber, Sarah Brightman, was born. Now, we best know her, of course, for her role in Phantom of the Opera. She was the original Christine in London and on Broadway. But did you know she started life out, for those that do remember, as part of a very sort of scandalous dance group called Hot Gossip. They were part of the Kenny Everett video show. And she had a big top 10 hit here in the United Kingdom called, do you remember? I Lost My Heart to a Starship Trooper. Still a floor filler even today. And finally, a man who I truly was able to call a friend and met him on numerous occasions, jazz pianist, Las Vegas entertainer, just wonderful impresario and really showbiz legend. Buddy Greco was born on this day, yes. And what's interesting about Buddy, and a lot of people don't realise this, is he truly did know, and sadly we lost him in 2017, but he did know the final sort of days of the late and wonderful actress Marilyn Monroe. If you look at these pictures, these were the pictures taken of her final weekend alive in Las Vegas, and as ever, he kept saying one day he would tell the true story. There's been lots of stories about what happened. Buddy told me his version, but I promised not to share it because obviously it's his story. And I think what's interesting is, I'm not sure whether this has been written down, put down to tape or whatever, because he had been married a couple of times. And I think what's interesting with Buddy is, as I say, he met and worked with all the greats, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, everybody you could think of, Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford. So he was there in the thick of it. But more importantly, let's not forget, he was also a brilliant act on his own. And as I say, Buddy Greco's name lives on, all thanks to that wonderful association with the icon that remains Marilyn Monroe. You're up to date with what happened on this day. I shall be back with more tomorrow. I hope to see you there. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.